Larry sent the letter, the ladder a letter later. Larry sent the ladder a letter later. Little Lucky Luke likes lakes. Lucky little Luke likes licking lakes. 2023 Lieber 31 Goldie. All right. So we were reading. We finished most of page 22, the section A Simple Probability Problem, which talked about the Monty Hall problem. And that was on our drive back in 2022 from Chambéry to Chamonix to Chamonix, France. Okay, all right, now, page 22, a simple forecasting problem. Once we get into the habit of assigning numbers to unknown events, we can quantify our... Okay, I absolutely lied to you guys. Okay, so from Beaune to Chambéry, we did the Monty Hall. And then from Chambéry to Chamonix, we did a simple forecasting problem, which talked about the conjunction fallacy. And so we are still in that section. We are now on page 25. That's where we left off. You'll forgive me. So the last sentence that we had seen, that we had looked at, it was this entraps us into what Tversky and Kahneman call the conjunction fallacy, in which a conjunction is more intuitively probable than either of its elements. So, although it's impossible for a conjunction to be more probable than either of its elements, the way that our its are wired, our instinct, our intuition, our mechanisms are, well, a conjunction, it just tells a better story sometimes. Sometimes one element may sort of explain the other one or put the other one in context. So even though either element may have been improbable, now we've got a nice story which we like. Okay. Carrying on. The forecasts of pundits are often driven by vivid narratives. Probability be damned. A famous 1994 cover story in The Atlantic by the journalist Robert Kaplan predicted the coming anarchy. Kaplan forecasted that in the first decades of the 21st century, wars would be fought over scarce resources such as water. Nigeria would conquer Niger, Benin, and Cameroon. World wars would be fought over Africa. The United States, Canada, India, China, and Nigeria would break apart, whereupon American regions with many Latinos would erase the border with Mexico, while Alberta would merge with Montana. Alberta is a province in Canada, and Montana is a state in the U.S. Crime would climb in American cities. AIDS would get worse and worse, together with a dozen other calamities, crises, and crack-ups. Yet as the article was becoming a sensation, including with President Bill Clinton, who passed it around the White House, the number of civil wars, the proportion of people without access to clean water, and the rate of American crime were sinking like stones. Within 3 years, an effective treatment for AIDS would begin to decimate its death toll, and more than a quarter century later, national borders have barely budged. The conjunction fallacy was first illustrated by Tversky and Kahneman with an example that has become famous as the Linda problem. I trust we're going to get back to our friend Kaplan, right? Or is that the end of the Kaplan story? He had a prediction, it didn't happen. In which case, that seems like a lame story to me. I mean, because it doesn't tell me that people haven't had good predictions. I know that people don't have good predictions, but I'm not... Anyway, we'll see what he does. The conjunction fallacy was first illustrated by Tversky and Kahneman with an example that has become famous as the Linda problem. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Please indicate the probability of each of these statements. And please actually do it. All right, here we go. Ready for our statements? Are you going to do it? Say it out loud. All right, Eris. I'll indicate the probability of each of these statements. Say it. You know I can't hear you. So, but you heard you, and if you said it, then great. That'll get those it's going. Let's do it. Linda is a teacher in elementary school. Linda is active in the feminist movement. Linda is a psychiatric social worker. Linda is a bank teller. Linda is an insurance salesperson. Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. Respondents judged that it was likelier that Linda was a feminist bank teller than that she was a bank teller. Once again, the probability of A and B was judged to be higher than the probability of A alone. The dated vignette, with its baby boomer Linda, backhanded compliment bright, because it's like sexist or something, because men don't. Anyway, passe protest and declining occupation betrays its early 1980s vintage. But as any psychology instructor knows, the effect is easy replicable, and today highly intelligent Amanda, who marches for Black Lives Matter, is still deemed likelier to be a feminist registered nurse than a registered nurse. The Linda problem engages our intuitions in a particularly compelling way. Unlike the selection task, where people make errors when the problem is abstract, if P then Q, and get it right when it is couched in certain real-life scenarios, here everyone agrees with the abstract law. The probability of both A and B is less than or equal to the probability of just A, but are upended when it is made concrete. Did I say greater than or less than? Because I thought I was reading something different. I thought it was, anyway. So that, well, you can see the text. The biologist and popular science writer Stephen Jay Gould spoke for many when he commented, "I know that the conjunctive statement is least probable, yet a little homunculus in my head, and it continues to jump up and down, shouting at me, but she can't just be a bank teller. Read the description." Yo, so important. Sometimes I wonder, am I contributing absolutely anything at all with these mechanisms? Now let's look at this sentence. Because, it's just the implications of, it's just the second major implication of evolution. There's the medical, biological, physiological implication of how these organs are here in the way that they are because of the pressures of natural selection, and there's the psychological implication that these mental processes are there in the way that they are because of the processes of natural selection. And just for the human brain, those have to be like two separate points, because one of them's a lot easier than the other one to stomach. I know that the conjunctive statement is least probable, yet a little homunculus in my head continues to jump up and down, shouting at me. Okay. Fine metaphor. What we're imagining here is that maybe we can imagine Dr. Gould. We can imagine his head, his face. He's alive. I think he's dead now, right? He's alive. I mean, definitely. Anyway, he's alive. We see his face. We see his skull is a little transparent, so we can see into his mind. His eyes. He's looking up at his mind, and you've got this little man. That's what a homunculus is, a small man, jumping up and down in the brain, looking down looking down below where the rest of the head is, the face and stuff. And he's going, Steven, Steven. But she can't just be a bank teller. Read the description. And that is typically how we see sort of the mind, that there are these little things that influence us, blah, blah. Okay, but with it theory, we know that that little man in the brain, there's actually hundreds of thousands of him. And each, it's not actually a man, it's an it. It's just an object. It's, or not an object, but an if-then processing rule. And Stephen, Dr. Gold, is not actually a character. He's just the flesh suit that all these homunculi, or its, are operating in. So the homunculus is not shouting at him, he is shouting at another homunculus. So if there is an it that goes, hey, if there's a conjunction proposed, then rate that as less likely than either of the two elements. And then you've got this other it going, what the fuck are you talking about? She can't just be a bank teller. Read the description. So he's going, if Linda is this outspoken, protesting person, she can't be work in the library or be a bank teller or whatever. I thought it was librarian before, but anyway, she can't be that. We need to imagine her where she's doing something. Then you present the conjunction. Oh yeah, she's a feminist bank teller. Okay, now I can imagine her being a feminist sometimes. She just told me she's involved, active in the feminist movement. All right, so I'm willing to accept then that she's a bank teller. And that dude's jumping up and down going, come on, look, feminist. All right, anyway, let's move on. That little homunculus can be exploited by skilled persuaders. A prosecutor with little to work with but a corpse washed up on a beach may spin a yarn on how her husband might, hypothetically... Bro... Isn't the whole belief that aliens made the pyramids and all this stuff and maybe gave us some intelligence and stuff, isn't that a conjunction fallacy? Isn't God like a conjunction fallacy? It's one thing to be like, okay, at some point there were biological organisms that could spend the time and have the, ability to craft these magnificent things. It's also possible that aliens visited. You don't want to accept that biological organisms on Earth did it. But you're like, oh, no, biological organisms couldn't do that unless it's ones that came from a whole other planet. I don't know. I don't know whether it's... Because I guess what these people keep saying, these ancient astrologists, whatever, ancient astronauts, they say that, yeah, but no, it just wasn't possible. They clearly visited, put the pyramids here, and then we became able to do the pyramids later. I don't know. Maybe it's not a conjunction fallacy, because maybe they're not saying no biological organisms could do it. But it is just it should be, rationally speaking, a bigger pill to swallow that we were visited. And then all the things that implies, that then they decide to hide themselves after. They put all these clues, and then, oh my gosh, why? Okay. It's just God for atheists. Okay. That's not a quote of mine. That's Michael Shermer. Okay. A prosecutor with little to work with but a corpse washed up on a beach may spin a yarn on how her husband might, hypothetically, have smothered her and dumped the body so he could marry his mistress and start a business with the insurance money. The defense attorney could tell a competing Shaggy Dog story in which she could, in theory, have been the victim of a late-night purse snatching that went horribly awry. She being the victim. I misread that. Each conjectural detail should make the scenario less likely according to the laws of probability, yet each can make it more compelling. As Puba says in The Mikado, it's all merely corroborative detail intended to give artistic verisimilitude to an otherwise bald and unconvincing narrative. The conjunction rule is a basic law of mathematical probability, and you don't need to think in numbers to understand it. This made Tversky and Kahneman pessimistic about people's intuitive sense of probability, which they argued is driven by representative stereotypes and available memories, rather than on a systematic reckoning of possibilities. They rejected the idea that inside every incoherent person, there is a coherent one trying to get out. Let's read that again if you got distracted, in case you got distracted by the drive. They rejected the idea that inside every incoherent person, there is a coherent one trying to get out. Okay? So when we make mistakes, stop fucking talking about, oh yeah, no, there's like a rational me in here, but I got distracted by, I got influenced by these other little homunculi in me, whatever. No, stop it. Judge myth, bro. All right, that's fantastic. Okay, other psychologists are more charitable. Nah, fuck that. Tversky and Kahneman, bro. As we saw with the Monty Hall dilemma, probability has several meanings, including physical propensity, justified strength of belief, and frequency in the long run. Still another sense is provided by the Oxford English Dictionary. The appearance of truth, or likelihood of being realized, which any statement or event bears in the light of present evidence. People faced with the Linda problem know that that frequency in the long run is irrelevant. There's only one Linda, and either she is a feminist bank teller or she isn't. In any coherent conversation, the speaker would supply biographical details for a reason, namely to lead the listener to a plausible conclusion. According to the psychologists Ralph Hertwig and Gerd Gigerzer, people may have rationally inferred that the relevant meaning of probability in this task is not one of the mathematical senses in which the conjunction rule applies, but the non-mathematical sense of degree of warrant in light of the present evidence. And they sensibly followed where the evidence pointed. Well, you know me, I'm never going to agree with someone that... Team Kahneman, all right? In support of the charitable reading, many studies, beginning with ones by Tversky and Kahneman themselves, show that when people are encouraged to reason about probability in the sense of relative frequency, rather than being left to struggle with the enigmatic concept of the probability of a single case, they are likelier to obey the conjunction rule. Imagine 1,000 women like Linda. How many of them do you think are bank tellers? How many of them do you think are bank tellers who are active in the feminist movement? Now the homunculus is quiet. We'll say, now that particular vivid narrative, the corroborative detail-loving is quiet. And then the better probability, the it's that are a little bit better with math and statistics and probability, they're the ones who end up delivering. So the it that originally delivered is quiet, and some better its deliver. But as Pinker says, now the homunculus is quiet, a coherent person tries to get out. Wait, so who said not, there's no, oh yeah, Kahneman rejected the idea that inside every incoherent person there's a coherent one trying to get out. Obviously there are good mechanisms, and sometimes they are hindered by not adaptive mechanisms, by malaits. There's not a full coherent person inside. Okay. So, Stephen, where are you at on that? Now the homunculus is quiet. A coherent person tries to get out. The rate of conjunction errors plummets. So, is the conjunction fallacy the quintessential demonstration of human probability blindness, an artifact of ambiguous wording and leading questions? Tversky and Kahneman insisted that it isn't. They noted that people commit the fallacy even when they are invited to bet on the possibilities. Yes, a majority prefer to bet that Linda is a feminist bank teller than that she is a bank teller. And even when the question is couched in frequencies where people could avoid a conjunction error by counting the bank tellers in their mind's eye, a substantial minority commit it. I'm going to rephrase. And even when the question is couched in frequencies, which could slap better its than the conjunction error it, the conjunction error it still runs. Substantial minority commit to it. Back off. All right. I mean, he and I are saying the same thing, but it's also very importantly different, and I think he'd agree with this phrasing. This rises to a majority when people consider each alternative in isolation, rather than seeing one next to the other, and so their noses are not rubbed in the absurdity of a subset outnumbering a superset. Kahneman has observed that humans are never so irrational as when protecting their pet ideas. So he advocated a new method for resolving scientific controversies to replace the time-honored custom of the rivals taking turns, moving the goalposts, and talking trash in volleys of rejoinders and replies. In an adversarial collaboration, the disputants agree in advance on an empirical test that would settle the matter and invite an arbiter to join them in carrying it out. Brilliant. An arbiter is good. And then also agree in advance. That's awesome. Fittingly, Kahneman collaborated with Hertwig to see who was right about the Linda problem, recruiting the psychologist Barbara Mellers to act as arbiter. The teams of rivals agreed to run 3 studies that couched the problem in frequencies. Of 100 people like Linda, how many are ... rather than asking about lone Linda. In their write-up of the complex results, the trio reported, this is wild. All right, you guys ready? I haven't read it. Here we go. I mean, if Kahneman says that, okay, they were right. All right, cool. But if Kahneman ain't convinced, I ain't convinced. All right, let's go. The trio reported, we did not think the experiments would resolve all the issues, nor did this miracle occur. Okay? But both sides agreed that people are prone to committing the conjunction fallacy even when dealing with frequencies. All that means is that, frequencies aren't enough to slap it that could surliver the conjunction fallacy it that is slapped by seeing a conjunction. And the being looking and the it that's looking for a good narrative. And they agreed that under the right circumstances, the right conditions, if you slap right, that under the right circumstances, the alternatives are available for comparison side by side, and the wording of the alternatives leaves nothing to the imagination. So revocate some of those alternatives. People can think their way out of the fallacy. Nope. The fallacy is not I am so disappointed in you right now. The fallacy is not a homunculus in the mind. People are not thinking their way out of the fallacy. There's no relationship between the person and the fallacy, except for the person is composed of fallacies and also better its. So no, they are not then thinking their way out of the fallacy. Dr. Pinker. No. You know damn well that all this stuff you're saying leads to a redefining of the self of the individual and so on. And you know that if you follow that redefining, then you should know to rephrase that and instead say that, yeah, if you slap different its, then different its deliver. Then its can surliver the other mala its that were delivering something that wasn't useful. Just revocate it. There's no coherent person trying to get out. Terrible, 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 terrible. Hope we're recording though, because these are fighting words, Dr. Pink. Okay, carrying on. That is the end of that section. We're really not happy. Okay. Because how's he going to redeem himself? He said it clear. He put the coherent person thing earlier with the outside of quotation marks. Boy, Pink. Okay, page 29. So the section is the moral from cognitive illusions. Yeah, Pinker, what is the moral? What is the moral? Tell me all about your little homunculi. How do we reconcile the rationality that allows our species to live by its wits in ancient and modern environments with the bloopers and gaffes that these brain teasers reveal? The confirmation bias, the overconfidence, the distractibility by concrete details and conversational habits. The classic errors in reasoning are often called cognitive illusions. We can call them maladaptive its. We can call them mallets, maybe. No, that would be confusing because we already have the term mallet. We'll just stick with mala, but then the plural should be male, I think, with an E at the end instead of malas. So let's just stick with male. Pinker, I'll get you caught up. Email me. We'll do a Zoom. The classic errors in reasoning are often called cognitive illusions, and the parallels with the visual illusions familiar from cereal boxes. No, these cognitive illusions are not male. Cognitive illusions are what sim. It's a simming environment. What's my word? Sim? Where's that? Sim. To expose brain to stimuli it is not prepared for, or that would overwhelm or cause conflict. Okay, yeah, so sim works here. So cognitive illusion is just, it's a sim. It's something that can induce a miss. No, a miss is not when the program's run correctly, but the output is wrong. A miss is when it's just a little miss in the way the program's run. So a sim can induce a miss. Then what induces a bad delivery? I guess an alarm, I think, is what, I don't have that on my wall, but an alarm, just take mala backwards. Okay, so the errors are male, and the alarms, the ones that often slap these male, are called alarms. And Pinker here, he says the classic errors in reasoning are often called cognitive illusions. Seems like that doesn't seem correct to me. It doesn't seem true to me. It seems like because visual illusions, that's the image, that's the visual illusion, right? It's not my error in processing, but they're fun to look at because of the error in processing, right? All right, whatever, Steven. Sorry, I'm getting. Yeah, I'm calling you Steven. Sorry, Dr. Pinker. Let's get back to. I'm listening. All right. The classic errors in reasoning are often called cognitive illusions, and the parallels with the visual illusions familiar from cereal boxes and science museums are instructive. They run deeper than the obvious fact that our eyes and minds can trick us. You dualist. Our minds can trick us? What does that mean? It's not even our eyes, it's our visual processing. Whatever. They explain how our species can be so smart and yet so easily deluded. Here are two classic illusions brought to life by the neuroscientist Bo Lotto. The first is a shading illusion. Believe it or not, dark stripes on the top of the box and the white stripes on the front are identical shades of gray. I don't have permission from Bolado, but thank you, Bolado, and good thing nobody's watching this. The second is a shape illusion. The angles of the four elbows are identical, 90 degrees. The first takeaway is that we can't always believe our eyes, or more accurately, the visual system one in our brains. Thank you. The second is that we can recognize our errors using system 2, say by punching 2 holes in an index card and laying it over the first figure, and by aligning the corner of the card with the elbows in the second. What the fuck are you talking about, bro? How is that using system 2? What you're doing is first of all, you're taking the time, which is something that is necessary for system 2 its to engage. You're just giving the time, and I have a video on this where I'm like, basically, I think the key to system 2 is just a little humility and a little time. And then those mechanisms will start interacting. And then also what you're doing is you're literally changing the input. So you're giving yourself evidence. And we have the principle refute to mute, which is specifically if you have an it that keeps running and you don't like it, then you have to keep confronting the evidence, the statement, the contradicting statement, and just keep looking at that. So basically what's happening is a whole bunch of your its are like, yo, look at this information. Shut the fuck up. Look at, we're refuting and muting here. Okay, so yeah, if you change the evidence or your exposure to the evidence, then that'll just be even better input for even the system 1. In fact, you don't even need the system 2. You can, system 1 can very easily follow these instructions. You told me to do it. System 2 would have had to have had the idea that, look, I'm reading here, you're telling me to do it. So I just do it. I don't need to expend any energy on sort of real its. And then I look at it and I'm going to see, oh, hey, that gray and that gray are the same without any advanced it processing. You revoculated the image. All right. What am I missing, bro? And that's why I want to include all this, because in either case, whether or not I'm saying sort of true things that are, whether I'm saying something that Pink would be like, oh yeah, good point, or whether I'm saying absolute nonsense, and even in Pinker's writing, it's already been addressed in what we've read so far. Either way, super interesting. Be pretty cool if I'm saying something important here, and it'd be really dope for you to have an example of how, or person, I guess if you're listening to me, you think that I'm pretty smart, of how I'm not rational, I'm not reasonable, and so I think clear as day right now that Pinker's got his language use all wrong here. And his whole perspective, his whole paradigm about the self, the judge myth, the integration myth, the ego myth, about it theory, it's all wrong. And you've heard me sort of try to explain it. I don't know whether I've given good reasons or not, but that's what my mind produced. It was mostly system 1. I would have to take pen and paper to start engaging system 2. All right. Anyway, this is mostly. So all of these PMs, I'd be happy for you to put in the comments. Oh, I got an AM for you. You said this at this time code, and I get that PM maybe, or I don't at all get that PM. In any case, here's an AM for it. All right, awesome. All right, so let's keep going. Still recording. All right. Oh, only 18 minutes. Okay. Uh, all right. So whatever. You see how you can do the Hey, fuck is that? Fuck no. All right. Um, but the wrong takeaway, but the wrong takeaway is that the human visual system is a buggy contraption that constantly fools us with figments and mirages. The human visual system is one of the wonders of the world. It is a precision instrument that can detect a single photon, recognize thousands of shapes, and negotiate rocky trails and high-speed autobahns. It outperforms our best artificial vision systems, which is why at the time of this writing, autonomous vehicles have not been loosed on city streets despite decades of R&D. The vision modules of the robocars are apt to mistake a tractor trailer for a billboard or a traffic sign plastered with stickers for a refrigerator filled with food. You want me to respond to that, huh? Or no? Anyway, I've made the coloring pretty easy so you don't have to listen to this. All right, so here we go. I think it's going to be quick. He said, but the wrong takeaway is that the human visual system is a buggy contraption that constantly fools us with figments and mirages. 100%. 100%. You may be thinking, but Eris, aren't you always saying these its are all pretty shit? All right, first of all, I do say that, but what I'm referring to is the demands that we put on the its today. Not referring to, we have some amazing abilities to detect a single photon, recognize thousands of shapes, negotiate rocky trails, and high-speed autobahns. Those are pretty darn good. We can even see a traffic light that has stickers on it and know it's still a traffic light. Amazing. I'm talking, when I criticize our its, I'm saying we overestimate what they're capable of. And also, we accept all of our PMs as the truth, all of our System 1 its, the first its that run, as giving us the right answer. Second thing, you know very well that not 100%. This business about that constantly fools us. Sorry. Oh, he's saying the wrong takeaway, right? But you know how I don't like fools us. And then also when I talk about the irrationality of our it system and the unreliability of many of our its, they're not out to like trick us. First of all, there is no us. We are just constituted of all these things. But and it isn't out to trick the other its. It's not like making shit up for the fun of it. When its send an incorrect message to other its, when they slap its that they shouldn't be slapping based on the input that they got, um, it's not playing tricks. It's just that they evolved to process the information that way and to pass on the memo that way. And it's just not useful with certain demands of today. Okay? All right, very good. Okay. The shape and shading illusions are not bugs, but features. The goal of the visual system is to provide the rest of the brain with an accurate description of the 3D shapes and material composition of the objects in front of us. This is a hard problem because the information coming into the brain from the retina doesn't reflect reality directly. The brightness of a patch on the retinal image depends not just on the pigmentation of the surface in the world, but on the intensity of the illumination falling on it. A gray patch could have arisen from a black surface illuminated by a bright light, or from a white surface illuminated by a dim one. That's the basis for the illusion called the dress, which took the internet by storm in 2015. Page 32. A shape on the retina depends not just on the 3D geometry of the object, but on its orientation from a vantage point. An acute angle on the retina could be a sharp corner viewed straight on, or a right-angled corner foreshortened. The visual system undoes the effects of these distortions, dividing out the intensity of the illumination and inverting the trigonometry of perspective to feed the rest of the brain with a representation that matches real shapes and materials in the world. The intermediate scratch pad in these calculations, the 2D array of pixels coming in from our retina, is hidden from the reasoning and planning systems of the brain because they would just be distractions. So these its, they have layers, they have departments. Remember, we are not integrated. Okay, so not every single it connects to every single other it. So you've got eye level its. If this wavelength, then go excite that next cell. And so it's not. I don't want to say it's hidden. It just doesn't reach the quote unquote reasoning and planning it's elsewhere in the brain. Thanks to this design, our brains are not very good light meters or protractors, but then they don't have to be, unless we are realist painters. The illusions emerge when people are asked to be just those instruments, when the demands don't match the things from our adapted period, when the demands don't match our pre-programmed its. The pictures, the viewer is asked to notice how bright the stripe is, how sharp the angle in the picture. The pictures have been confected so that simple properties, equal brightness, right angles, are buried in the scratch pads that the conscious mind ordinarily ignores. All right, just know, I'm not going to respond every time. Just know that anytime he talks about conscious or you is this whatever, anytime he's not talking about just the interaction between its, know that I got another bone to pick. All right. Well, it's all one big bone. All right. If the questions were about the things in the world captured in the pictures, our impressions would be correct. The gray stripe really is darker than the white stripe on both the lit and shaded faces of the box. The elbows poised at different tilts really are bent at different angles, or they really would be if we were seeing that image in real life. In the same way, cognitive illusions like the ones in this chapter may arise from our setting aside the literal statement of a question as it comes into our brains and thinking through to what a speaker in the social world would reasonably ask. Doing arithmetic on deceptively conspicuous numbers, verifying a proposition about a handful of tokens, choosing from clues offered by a sly and omniscient master, and following a vivid character sketch to a literal but implausible conclusion, are a bit like judging the angles and shades of gray in the printed page. What are these little needle things? They're terrible. Oh, I have them all over. They lead to incorrect answers, yes, but they are often correct answers to different and more useful questions. A mind capable of interpreting the intent of a questioner in context is far from unsophisticated. That's why we furiously hit 0 and scream operator into the phone when the bot on a helpline reiterates a list of useless options, and only a human can be made to understand why we called. Kahneman, are you, Pink, are you not Team Kahneman? I'm sorry to talk about teams as though that matters with these kind of questions and research, but do you not trust Kahneman? Do you not get it? The explicability of our irrational reactions is not an excuse to fall back on them. Yeah, by the way, thanks for saying that, because the way that you were talking about how, but actually it's super reasonable. I'm glad that in your words I can remind the viewer that, don't go thinking that all your its are actually perfect in these printed tricks. Just find a couple exceptions when they're weird, but in general, and when you need them to be, they're all perfect. The explicability of our irrational reactions is not an excuse to fall back on them, any more than we should always trust our eyes. Science and technology have thrillingly thrillingly extended the powers of the visual system beyond what nature gave us. We have microscopes for the small, telescopes for the distant, photography for the past, lighting for the dark, remote sensing for the invisible. And as we sally into realms outside the envelope in which we evolved, like the very fast and the very high, believing our senses can be fatal. The judgments of depth and orientation that allow our brains to undo the effects of projective geometry in everyday life depend on converging lines, receding texture, and flowing contours arrayed along the ground as we move and look about. When a pilot is suspended thousands of feet in the air with nothing but empty space between him and the earth, and the horizon is obscured by clouds, haze, or mountains, his visual sense gets out of sync with reality. As he flies by the seat of his pants, which cannot distinguish acceleration from gravity, every correction makes things worse and can send the plane into a graveyard spiral within minutes, the fate of an inexperienced and overconfident John F. Kennedy Jr. in 1999. As excellent as our visual systems are, rational pilots know when to discount them and turn their perception over to instruments. Yes, it's not just like, oh, let's activate System 2 mechanisms now. But no, give even your System 1 mechanisms. Well, if they're experienced pilots, they've definitely become System 1 mechanisms, System 1 it's by now. Just give them good information. So a more general principle than refute to mute would be like, show to know. No, I don't know. And as excellent as our cognitive systems are in the modern world, we must know when to discount them and turn our reasoning over to instruments. The tools of logic, probability, and critical thinking, critical reflection, that extend our powers of reason beyond what nature gave us. Because in the 121st century, when we think about the seat of our when we think by the seat of our pants, every correction can make things worse and can send our democracy into a graveyard spiral. Look, I know we're on the same team, Pinker, but I just swear we'd be able to move better and faster if you stopped with this soul conscious nonsense.